Welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture this. We are dropping straight onto the gritty, high-voltage floor of NNexus Labs down in Virginia Beach. The air is literally humming. The room is bathed in this harsh cinematic glare of halogen lights, and sitting right there are glowing REBCO high-temperature superconducting coils, chilled all the way down to 20 Kelvin. We're looking at a team of brilliant, and let's be honest, maybe slightly mad scientists who are about to fundamentally rewrite the rules of space travel. So here's the core question we're tackling today, and it's a fascinating one. What if the way we've been doing standard rocket science is actually, well, philosophically offensive? Think about it. Our whole era of standard propulsion basically boils down to burning dinosaur juice or maybe heating up some boring noble gases in a totally symmetric sphere. You heat a gas, you run it through a symmetric magnetic nozzle, and you just spit it out. The result? Half of your precious energy is utterly wasted in radial expansion. You're constantly fighting nature's isotropic tendency, that urge for things to expand equally in all directions. And it leaves your ship, as the lab's designers perfectly put it, just sitting out there in a vacuum getting hot and looking stupid.
Right, because standard plasma propulsion just creates this perfectly symmetric sphere of hot plasma. But here is the kicker. In the cold, dead vacuum of space, if your exhaust is perfectly symmetric, you don't go anywhere. You're just a space heater. To actually reach the stars, we have to stop fighting this isotropic tendency. We really need to stop burning fuel in such a balanced, polite way and start pulling off what's basically a technological heist against the laws of symmetry itself.
The contrast is pretty stark. On one side, you have the symmetrical rocket. If you throw a nice, expanding sphere backward, those momentum vectors literally just cancel each other out in the radial wash. Total waste. On the other side, though, we have something entirely different, the braided T32 trefoil Torus-Knot. This thing isn't just pushing mass around, it is actually locking a mathematical twist into the universe's rubber band. It's an elite, asymmetric, incredibly violent recoil.
To trick nature like this, we absolutely must shift from simple mass expulsion over to sheer mathematical manipulation. We need to inject what the lab beautifully calls the black flame of physics. And what is that? It's topological asymmetry. By deliberately designing a completely unbalanced system, we effectively bias the universe. We force it to comply with a directional kick, a kick that nature absolutely abhors. And to pull this off, we need a very, very specific kind of knot.
Which brings us to Act 2, the math of the trefoil. Let's unpack the secret of this T32 knot. It all comes down to a really fascinating concept called chirality, or handedness. Now, this isn't just your standard run-of-the-mill circle. This specific geometric path wraps around a torus 3 times longitudinally and twice meridianally. The real magic here is that it fundamentally breaks mirror symmetry right out of the gate. Think of it like this. You can have a left-handed trefoil or a right-handed one, and no matter how much you stretch or bend or twist it, it can never be deformed into its mirror image. Nature looks in the mirror and sees something entirely different. That broken symmetry? That is the ultimate key to generating thrust.
Now imagine taking a boiling soup of electrons and ions, just a beautiful, chaotic plasma, and confining it inside a magnetic field that is tied into this exact chiral knot. What you've just done is inject conserved magnetic helicity straight into the exhaust. In a highly conducting plasma, the fundamental mathematics of the universe actually forces nature to conserve this specific twist. So the system becomes topologically locked, even as the plasma is practically screaming to untie itself.
So how do you actually get moving? Well, you use the topologically asymmetric field-coupled mode, or TAFCM for short. It relies on something called the detachment event. Step 1 is the extrusion and squeeze. As the ship's superconducting stator coils squeeze this knotted plasma toward the rear, the chiral topology just flat out refuses to compress symmetrically. It won't do it. That leads to step 2, forced reconnection. The plasma is forced out and the magnetic field lines aggressively snap, twist, and pop. Finally, step 3, the biased kick. Because the knot is chiral, the magnetic stress tensor is fundamentally unbalanced. It turns all that stored topological energy into raw, directed kinetic energy. Think of it kind of like a twisted wet towel being wrung completely dry. Because of the knot's chirality, the energy release is strictly anisotropic, meaning the plasma forcefully squirts out along a preferential axis, delivering this massive directional burst of alpha waves. But man, it gets even wilder when we take this concept into the interstellar medium. Out there, the drive undergoes this predatory evolution called the topological drill. It literally projects its chiral knot forward, grabs the galaxy by its magnetic hair, and aggressively pulls the ship forward. It is mind-blowing.
Moving on to Act 3, the HR safety briefing. Seriously, What happens when elite high-field physics collides head-on with standard corporate bureaucracy? Well, you get a memo from Linda and HR. I'm going to read this directly because it's just too good. Quote, "We kindly request that you redesign the magnetic coils to be perfectly isotropic so that energy is released equally in all directions, fostering a fair environment for the plasma." End quote. An HR mandate for workplace symmetry. I mean, it completely ignores Newton's third law. A symmetrical explosion is just a highly explosive recipe for staying exactly where you are, parked forever.
So, of course, HR flags the working term death donut as a hostile work environment and decides to rebrand it the Wellness Torus. Meanwhile, the terrified graduate students who are actually building the thing are forced to wear level A hazmat suits and thick lead-lined aprons just to talk to an IBM server, all for what HR very casually calls math-related safety. But hey, while HR is busy complaining about fairness to the plasma, the real heroes of this story are ignoring the noise and diving straight into the quantum simulator. You see, standard quantum optimization algorithms just wander blind in what's known as mathematical barren plateaus. It's a purgatory. To map the exact nonlinear magnetic gradient required to break mirror symmetry, the team has to bypass that trap entirely.
And they do it using what's called the Kookaburra seed, QAOA warm start. They aren't just guessing the phase angles for a T32 trefoil. No, they drop the optimizer straight into the topological constraint value using some incredibly precise coordinates. Layer 1 is initialized at a gamma of 0.400 and a beta of 2.575. Layer 2 is initialized at gamma 0.679, beta 2.827. This rips right through all the computational noise, mapping the exact nonlinear gradient needed to break parity and ignite the Rebco Charlie nodes safely. And they do all of this long before anyone even thinks about touching a high-voltage relay. Which brings us to the climax. Act 4, the live firing.
We're finally leaving the digital simulation terminal behind and walking toward that heavy, vibrating 60 Hz hum of the Virginia Beach substation. It is time for the real-world benchtop test. They call this the Gallon Stand Sacrament. Now we're skipping the 600-degree lithium fire hazards for today. Instead, the team is using Gallon Stand. It's a much friendlier liquid chrome alloy made of gallium, indium, and tin that actually stays liquid at room temperature. And the timeline for this test is brilliantly, brutally fast. Minute 1, they clamp the permanent magnet Hallback array right across a clear PMMA loop. Minute 2, drop in the graphite electrodes. Minute 3, close the high-voltage DC relay. And minute 4, they measure the Lorentz body force. This is purely testing Maxwell's equations. There are no mechanical impellers here, 0 moving parts.
But to get to that point, we have to follow the calibration ladder, fully honoring Richard Feynman's deep tech reality check. Because listen, liquid metal, when you drop it into a massive 5 Tesla magnetic field, absolutely hates turning corners. The immense physical difficulty here is just staggering. You can't just jump straight to the knot. First, you have to validate the straight pipe baseline for Hartman flow. Second, you map a single bend to quantify those massive 3D manifold losses across 1-inch thick stainless steel channels. Only after doing all that grueling work do you finally move to the knot surrogate to map the actual Lorentz force vectors.
Okay, imagine you are standing right there in that lab. That 60 Hz substation is literally vibrating in your teeth. The REBCO coils hit 20 Kelvin. The magnetic field grips the highly conductive liquid metal so tightly, we're talking thousands of times more force than the fluid's own inertia, that it completely, utterly crushes all turbulence. The fluid turns into a perfectly laminar, solid plug, just slipping along a microscopic 5-micron boundary layer.
And then comes the moment of truth. The high-voltage relay slams shut. The Lorentz body force reaches out and violently shoves those ions sideways. The fluid cell pumps through the topological knot. And right there on the benchtop, the piezoelectric load cells instantly spike at 14.28 newtons. It is absolutely incredible. It actually proves net axial impulse. That asymmetric field creates a clean, anisotropic recoil to the stator frame right there in the physical world. No way around it, it works.
And that brings us perfectly full circle. You know, you can sit in a plush conference room with HR and debate the ethics of asymmetry and inclusivity and momentum vectors all day long. But the universe doesn't read the memo. When that liquid metal flows and the superconducting coils hum to life, the conversation is over. The universe only does the math.
The project notes sum it up perfectly with this kind of joyful, mad science reverence. They wrote, "You aren't just pushing gas. You are using the fundamental topology of mathematics to squeeze thrust out of a broken mirror." I mean, what a line. It's this epic shift from just throwing mass backward to literally twisting the vacuum's arm behind its back and forcing it to push you forward.
So, I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. When you finally stop fighting nature, when you actually flip the switch on that substation and let a fundamentally broken symmetry recoil violently against the vacuum itself, where will the math push you next? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious.